Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 9 of Global Contenders, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of touring cars, both real and PD original fictional ones. And this particular pick is one of those fictional vehicles made just for Gran Turismo, and the particular car is the Honda CRZ hybrid touring car. Now this is based on a vehicle which, kind of like the Toyota Prius, but not as much as the Prius, isn't really the first vehicle that would come to mind when you're thinking of making a race car. But that can sometimes juxtapose quite nicely to make a really cool racing car. In real life, for instance, there is a GT300 class racing version of the Toyota Prius, and it's actually far cooler than the Prius touring car that we have on the game. But that's beside the point. This vehicle isn't real, but it's cool that we have cars like this on the game, taking a vehicle which isn't everyone's first choice of a race car and turning it into one. Now straight off the bat, this, speaking of the Prius, is, I would say, a far superior touring car to the Prius. Now it's kind of an unfair advantage because although they're both hybrids, the Prius feels very much locked into that hybrid style. It has the single gear, not a huge amount of power to work with, and it's priced too high. This car is allowed to be tuned, and although it's a hybrid, technically it doesn't feel like one. It has a little bit of electric boost, but drives for the most part pretty much like a normal race car. So the feel of this car and the way it delivers its performance is far more usable than the Prius. The Prius feels just like a novelty, nothing more. This car feels like you could actually use it to potentially win races. Now in terms of spec, what you get from this car is a 1.5 litre engine, 322 horsepower in fully tuned form, which is not bad at all, 239 foot-pounds of torque, which is also very good for a small engine, and it is very light, as you'd hope. 910 kilos is not bad at all for a touring car. That is lighter than most of the other touring cars, in fact. As far as horsepower per tonne, well, it doesn't have a massive amount of power, but 354 horsepower per tonne is not bad for a vehicle that's only got 322 horsepower to begin with. The PP, not surprisingly, I would say, is a little too high at 506, and I definitely wouldn't recommend racing it at that level. But under certain circumstances, for say 450 or 475, maybe 500, but be very careful racing it at that level, it can be useful. Now the handling is a little bit on the heavy side, but being a front-wheel drive car, especially with a wider track than the original, that's not too surprising. It is essentially, after all, kind of a fusion between coupe and hatchback, so it does have that kind of front-wheel drive hot hatch feel through the corners, especially with more power and more torque on board. As far as its overall handling package though, it's a nice car to drive. It's not necessarily the best handling of touring cars, but it's certainly not the worst, and it's relatively compact, so it's pretty good for city tracks where the bigger, more powerful cars just don't get the chance to use that power. Tracks like London or Monaco. As far as price, this car costs 185 grand. That's a lot for a hybrid, especially a 322 horsepower hybrid touring car. So the question is it worth that? Well, as with some other models which I've reviewed in the past, I would say it depends on the type of driver you are. If you're looking purely to spend money from the point of view of just winning races, no. Because you could just save that money and maybe save a little more and get something like a Skyline touring car, or just go for something completely different entirely. If, however, you already have the obvious choices of touring car or race car, and you're just looking to try something different, or you, like me for instance, like having strange cars in your garage, stuff that's a bit oddball, then this may appeal to you. It's not as oddball as the Prius touring car, but that's kind of a good thing in the case of this car. Now, the straight line performance, as you'd expect, isn't damn bustingly quick, but it's not slow either. It's decent enough to get the job done. Overall, I would say that the best point about this car is the fact that it exists on the game. It's a novelty, and you're going to love it for that. It's a cool looking, fun to drive, reasonably competitive little car under the right circumstances. Don't look into it beyond that though. It's not going to deliver some mind-blowing package of sleeper touring car appeal. It's just not that kind of car. So if you're looking to spend 185 grand on a race car that's a little bit different from the norm, then check out the CRZ touring car. I would definitely recommend it instead of the Prius touring car. No competition whatsoever between the two. But if you're looking purely to win races, well, fairly obviously there are better options out there. But overall, that's it for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.